Hi there. Welcome back. So, this is the book that we're going to be reading. I've shown it to you before. It's called Many Lifetimes, and it's by Kelsey and Joan Grant. And I have my camera arranged in this way so that not only can you see me, but you can see how beautiful it is out there today. Man, it is so gorgeous. So, I'm in Winnipeg, Canada, and this is my living room window, and it overlooks what is the Trans-Canada Trail. So right down there, yeah, you can see it there. There's the Trans-Canada Trail. And that goes from one end of Canada to the other, like from ocean to ocean. Okay, I just happen to be on it here. So on the other side of this trail here is a beautiful, I don't know what you would call it, a fold of trees. And then just beyond that is a river. And it's changing to fall now. So I don't know if you can tell, the leaves are turning just a little bit. Soon the leaves will have completely dropped. And then out there, I usually see deer and foxes and coyotes and all sorts of wonderful, you know, wildlife drama. Anyhow, today I'm just enthralled because the trees are dancing because it's windy and I know it's just beautiful out. I was out earlier, a little bit of clouds against that blue sky up there. Mm, it's a perfect day. Pretty soon it's going to be winter here and it's going to be like crazy cold because Winnipeg, the city that I live in, is like the coldest city of any size in the world. Okay, it's right smack in the middle of Canada. It's just across the border from the United States. And so there's no big water bodies to mitigate, the temperature. So it's on a par with Alaska. Whoa. Yeah. Why does anyone live here? I mean, I live here because I have people here, but otherwise, yeah, no one would live here. Okay. So here we go. I hope you enjoy this book, and maybe I should just turn it a little bit so you can see more of nature and less of me as I read this. Okay, so uh, this is chapter 4, and it's entitled The Supraphysical in Medicine. And again, this is a chapter written by Kelsey. So, Kelsey, psychiatrist, he writes alternate chapters in this book. His wife, Joan Grant, wrote the other chapters in between. She's more of a psychic, he's a psychiatrist. And so I really enjoy what he has to say about past life regression and all that hypnotherapy, because in fact, I work in hypnotherapy, past life regression. And oh, look at the trees. Oh, wow. I don't know if you can see that. Maybe you can't really see it, but they're really dancing. Oh, look at that. Wow. Okay, well, here we go. All right. I believe that the concept of the super physical body, as Joan has formulated it, contributes to our understanding of the mechanisms involved in a variety of medical phenomena which are by no means confined to psychiatry. An example of one of these occurred a year or two before I met her. I was talking with Mr. John Barron, the plastic surgeon, about the problems involved in fixing patients in the sometimes curious positions required for the purpose of transferring skin from one region to another, when I recalled a trick performed by a certain stage hypnotist. He would hypnotize members of the audience whom he had invited onto the stage and cause them to assume various bizarre positions which would normally be exceedingly uncomfortable, and leave them there while he carried on with the remainder of his act. When mobility was eventually restored to the living statues, they would sheepishly declare that they had kept their position without any conscious exercise of will and without the least discomfort. It occurred to me that it might be possible to apply the same principle to some of these patients. Mr. Barron replied that he had a case under his care at the moment who might prove a perfect subject for an experiment. The patient was a young man who, in an accident, had lost the forepart of his right toe. No, the forepart of his right foot. Forepart of his right foot. In order to cover the stump of the foot with skin, which would withstand a reasonable amount of wear and tear, it was necessary for an area of skin to be brought down to the foot from the abdominal wall. This procedure was going to need 5 separate operations. The first step would be to fashion an area of skin on one side of his abdomen into a tube, which would remain attached to each end to preserve the blood supply. Then, as soon as it was apparent that the tube was healthy, a matter of a week or two, the next stage would be to free the upper end of the tube from the abdomen and stitch it into the site on the left forearm. Into a site on the left forearm. Thus, for the next few weeks, while the tube was establishing itself in this position, the patient's arm would be linked to his abdomen by the tube. And during this period, it would be vitally important that his arm did not move, for at any moment, any movement might exert tension on the tube. The next stage would be to sever the lower end of the tube from the abdomen and to insert it into a second site on the left wrist. To sever it from the lower end, sever the tube from the abdomen and insert it into a second site on the left wrist. After this operation, the patient's arm would be free again, but it would be carrying this tube of skin, looking rather like a large looping caterpillar. Then, when the tube was clearly thriving in this situation, it would be possible to undertake the next and most crucial stage. This would involve detaching one end of the tube from the wrist, and then having the patient place his left hand in a precise position on the top of his right foot so that the free end of the tube could be stitched along one margin of the stump. Oh my goodness. It would then be necessary for the patient to remain in this position for several weeks. For not until the tube had again become well established would it be safe to detach the other end from the wrist, open the tube up, and apply it to cover the whole of the wounded area. The patient agreed enthusiastically to the experiment, and so we decided that for the second stage, during which the left forearm would be linked by the tube to his abdomen, we would rely upon post-hypnotic suggestion to fix his arm in position. The effect was remarkable. Not only did the arm maintain its position with complete accuracy, but when it was released some 3 weeks later, there was no stiffness whatever in the fingers, wrist, elbow, or shoulder. Encouraged by this, we decided to use nothing but post-hypnotic suggestion at the 4th stage to fix his hand to his foot. And we were able to tell him that so long as the precise angle at which the hand had been placed on his foot remained unchanged, he could move in any way he liked. Again, the technique was astonishingly successful. The hand never budged on the foot, and the patient was perfectly comfortable throughout the whole period. The fact that one hand was stuck to a foot caused him no inconvenience. It scarcely seemed to register on his consciousness. Moreover, he developed an astounding agility And as he could do everything for himself, he made minimal demands on the nursing staff. But the most gratifying feature became apparent when, after 28 days, the pedicle, interesting word, the pedicle was deemed fit for the final operation. I hypnotized the patient again. The pedicle was detached from the wrist, and I gave him the signal to unlock himself. Immediately, he had full movement in every joint without a trace of stiffness anywhere. He could arch his spine backward like an acrobat, and he could manipulate a cigarette lighter with the fingers of his left hand. There was simply no need for physiotherapy to overcome the sort of stiffness which would almost certainly have developed after weeks of immobilization by any mechanical means. I would not anticipate a similar result on every patient who happened to be a good hypnotic subject. I'm sure in retrospect that the essential factor responsible for success in this case was the very efficient link this patient had between his supraphysical and his physical bodies. There was another point which I think supports this view. As a rule, when two skin surfaces are in contact for a period of weeks, the sweating which occurs between them usually causes the skin to become soggy and unhealthy. But the skin on both the palm of this patient's left hand and on the top of his right foot was perfectly normal. As sweating is a function which is not under conscious control, I think its absence in this instant can be attributed to the efforts of the supraphysical body. The concept of the supraphysical body offers, as Joan has remarked, a credible rationale for the success of so-called spiritual healing. In this connection, the supraphysical may be linked. No. In this connection, the supraphysical may be likened to a magnet that is placed beneath a sheet of paper upon which have been scattered some iron filings. The lines of force traveling between one end of the magnet and the other will draw the filings into a definite pattern and hold them there. Similarly, the energy of the superphysical maintains the particles which make up the physical body in a definite pattern, but one of the functions as well as structure. I'm going to read that sentence again. The lines of force traveling between one end of the magnet and the other, will draw the filings into a definite pattern and hold them there. Similarly, the energy of the supraphysical maintains the particles which make up the physical body in a definite pattern, but one of function as well as structure. Disease or injury disturb this pattern, and healing represents the efforts of the supraphysical to bring it back to normal. Medicine and surgery, in the ordinary sense, concentrate on trying to minimize the task which the supraphysical has to perform, perhaps by redeeming a lack of some vitamin or hormone or some essential substance, perhaps by giving a drug which makes it impossible for bacteria to proliferate, perhaps by excising a tumor or by fixing some injured part in the most favorable position for healing to occur. But it would seem a rational procedure also to supplement the energy in the supraphysical, and I think there is considerable evidence to suggest that this is possible. Yes, I would agree with that. My first experience of healing in this way is not extensive, but I will quote 3 instances. One occurred when Joan slammed the door of the car on her left forefinger. The pain was intense. and discoloration appeared immediately. I would have expected healing to occur very soon, for the finger for the finger to be out of action for some days. We happened to be in the depths of the country, so I pulled the car off the road and I told Joan to shift level. When I clasped her finger in my hand and concentrated first on making a vivid mental picture of its anatomy, the skin, the bones, the nerves, blood vessels. Then I asked her to let the pain flow into my hand so that I can throw it away. After some repetitions of this, she declared that her finger was free of pain. At that point, I tried to visualize myself literally driving energy into her finger to accelerate the process of healing. It would be scientifically indefensible to claim that anything happened as a result of my efforts. But the fact is that the finger did not swell, it gave her no further pain, and suffered no loss of function. In the course of writing this book, we visited some Swiss friends who live in Bern. As they were also friends of the surgeon Leo Ekman, I took the opportunity to watch him perform several operations. In the middle of one morning, I came back to the house to find that our hostess had just returned from having a wisdom tooth out. The extraction had been unexpectedly difficult and was performed under a local anesthetic, which had now largely worn off. So, exhausted and in considerable pain, she had gone to bed. Learning that she was allergic to aspirin, I offered to try to help her with hypnosis. She proved an excellent subject and quickly reached a deep state. I followed the same technique, which had apparently helped Joan. I first placed a hand on her cheek and urged her to let the pain flow into my hand so that I could throw it away. Then I made a mental picture of the tooth socket with its blood clot in position and visualized driving energy into it to hasten the healing. Finally, I told her that within a few moments, her state would change to one of normal sleep, which would last for an hour, and then I left her. A little while later, Dr. Ekman arrived at the house. I explained what I had done, and then, since the hour was almost up, we went to see the patient. She awoke as we entered, and the change in her appearance was remarkable. She was completely free of symptoms and felt so full of energy that she insisted upon getting up and resuming her normal program. She suffered no further discomfort from her extraction, and the socket healed unusually quickly. This patient's well-being so impressed Dr. Ekman that he invited me to attempt a repeat of the procedure upon a patient from whom, on the previous day, I had watched him remove the lobe of a lung. This patient, a man of 60, was ready to extend to me the supreme confidence he had in his surgeon and readily entered hypnosis. I placed my hand on the bandages over his wound, and I asked him to let the pain flow into my hand. It was interesting to note that his breathing quite spontaneously became deeper. Suddenly he coughed. He opened his eyes in astonishment and exclaimed, "But it did not hurt." Then I made a mental picture of the structures of his chest wall, which had been divided during the operation, and I imagined myself driving in energy. I am told that this patient made an uneventful and unusually rapid recovery. I must emphasize that these cases carry no scientific weight whatever. The most that can be fairly said is that they support rather than detract from the validity of the concept of transferring energy to the supra-physical body, and the innumerable other therapists could relate more impressive experiences of a similar nature. At present, very little is known about the essence of the factors involved in the interaction between the two personalities, but if it were to become generally accepted that there are levels of reality other than the one which can be perceived through the five senses, such matters could become the subject of unprejudiced research. Then I suspect laws would be discovered. No, yes, laws would be discovered to govern both the transmission and the reception of the energy involved in healing, and orthodox medicine would be enriched by the addition to its armamentarium of techniques which at present are too open to charlatanism. Let me read that sentence, okay? Then I suspect laws would be discovered which govern both the transmission and the reception of the energy involved in healing, and orthodox medicine would be enriched by the addition to its armamentarium of techniques which at present are too open to charlatanism. And there's a pause here in this chapter. So, in fact, I'm going to pause here and continue next time. But before I do that, I just want to say a few things. I read this book a long time ago, and I really enjoyed it. But, I think I read it before I even got into hypnosis. Now, I not only do hypnosis, but I teach hypnosis. And I also teach Reiki. I do Reiki, I teach Reiki. And, when he talks about having his client or patient connect with the pain and seeing the energy leave and go into his hands so that he can throw it away. I mean, to me, this all makes sense because also I'm a I'm a shamanic practitioner, and so I've had a lot of shamanic training as well. And in shamanic training, you actually do that. You take the pain or the whatever is in the person's body that is working against it into your own body, and you you get rid of it. I mean, you can throw it away, or you can actually suck it into your body and then spit it out and get rid of it, dispose of it that way. I mean, these are rather dramatic things to do. But in Reiki healing, I've always thought that there was a level of healing that was like he said, with the iron filings, like we are creating a pattern. We are imposing a healthy pattern as healers. When we put our hands on someone, we do spiritual healing, Reiki healing, or other forms too. We are imposing a healthy pattern on the person we are working with at a subatomic level. And that's what he's talking about. And so, wow, this chapter really hits me in a big way. I've got to, kind of think about it. And yeah, wow. Okay, I hope you enjoyed this. And I hope you enjoyed a little bit, my ramblings. Not really maybe germane to the subject, but, maybe they are. So if you're a healer of some type, maybe it would help you in some way. Because a lot of times, when you think about something, you see it on a new level. Your own wisdom grows, and then you can bring everything you know about healing to the table and work with the person. And this is what he did. Wow, that was a good chapter, and it wasn't even the whole chapter. It was just maybe half a chapter. So, if you enjoyed it, come back next time, and we'll continue. Okay, and till soon. I have to find the off button here. I don't know where it is. Oh, there it is.